All right, what is up, everybody, and welcome to another TBRCon 2023 reading. And I'm very pleased today to be joined by Jonathan Nevair. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Adrian.
It's great to have you here. And if you could just let people know a little bit about yourself.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Jonathan Nevair, and I am a science fiction author and also a educator. I'm an art historian, and I am the author of the three-book series Wind Tide, which is an epic space opera, and the author of the recently released Stellar Instinct, which is a standalone sci-fi thriller set in space.
Awesome. Well, just to give people a little bit more of an idea of what Stellar Instinct is about, since that's the book you're going to be reading from today, if you could give a quick synopsis.
Sure. So, Stellar Instinct is a secret agent adventure where a woman named Lelaine Renault is part of an organization known as GAM Ops, which is a kind of clandestine government organization that oversees security and protection for a very expansive gallery. And in this particular instance, a very famous entrepreneur summons a entity of frightening intellectual and cosmic proportions, and Lelaine is called upon to stop basically this entrepreneur from taking over the gallery at the galaxy at all costs.
Amazing. And I'm just going to show everybody the cover right here. Such a beautiful cover. I really love that.
Yeah.
It captures the essence of this book so well. For you in particular, what was it about this kind of like spy-fi thriller sort of aesthetic that really called to you?
Well, I really love a good secret agent story. From everything from the wild scenery and the locations to the gadgets to the mysteries and the foes and criminal masterminds, and matching that together with a space opera context was just such an exciting opportunity. There's so much room for creativity, I feel like, in a space-based galactic empire to
Hmm.
play around with the secret agent story. And so, really, that's just the way that it came into being.
Fantastic. And, your original trilogy, the Wind Tide Trilogy, which I'll show people right here, coming from a three-book series and then, you know, starting fresh with a single book, how was it for you kind of going in without this expectation of previous titles in a series and that kind of thing?
Yeah. It was really a nice change. It was like this book felt like a palate cleanser in a way, like a literary palate cleanser. It was like I didn't have to worry about previous narratives. I didn't have to make good on promises from previous books. Didn't have a very massive arc to deal with. It was all this self-enclosed single story. It was fast-paced. It was action-based, and that was really fun and I think really different. The only real shift I had to deal with was being more efficient with storytelling, especially economy of words, and just thinking about balancing out how much exposition there is early on and how much world building happens while that thriller pace keeps moving through from start to finish.
Yeah, totally. And this is I know you originally had the Wind Tide trilogy released through an indie publisher, and then you switched over to self-publishing. You re-released the Wind Tide trilogy with these beautiful covers that were redesigned by Luke Tarzian, a friend of ours. And this is your first kind of, I would say, from the ground up
Yep.
release as a self-publisher. So how did it feel going into that process?
Oh, it was wonderful. In a lot of ways, it was absolutely wonderful to have full control from start to finish. I was able to hire Cheska Sunit, who's this awesome artist who did the cover, and then Faye Lane, who did the design on it. Luke came back and did some really cool interior formatting. And it was nice to be able to have total control over those components of it, also about when I wanted to release, how I wanted to release it, and also then to make some decisions in terms of really editorial issues where again sort of having full creative control allows you to do some things that you might not be able to do with pressure from, let's say, editors, right, in a publishing
Yeah.
house. And so that's one of the things that I love about self-pub is, in this book, there's some second person chapters that float in here and there. And, that might have been a little bit of a hard sell. But I like the experiment, and so having that creative freedom is one of the beautiful things I think about self-pub.
Definitely. And it's funny. Your book has a lot of themes about control. So I feel like it's good that you have
It
more control
does.
over
It
the.
does. Maybe those have to do with the author, maybe not.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into a reading here. And Jonathan, if you want to just let people know a little bit about um, the section of the book that you're going to be reading from
Sure.
and why you chose that particular section.
Sure. So, not surprising, Lee, I'm going to choose the opening. So, this is going to be chapter one. And not only am I choosing this because, I think it's obviously the great place to start because it's the beginning, but I think it also does a good job of introducing the main character
Mm.
and setting the tone for the type of person who she is and the type of world she lives in. And so this is going to give you a little bit of almost like a pre-narrative of what's to follow in the main adventure line to come.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And I will get myself out of here and give Jonathan the spotlight. So
All
once that
right.
shifts over, I will hand the reins to you, my friend.
All right. Stellar Instinct, Chapter 1. Operation Snow Eclipse, Planet Frebu, Star System Anuhet, Outer Spiral. Agent Lelaine Renault ignored the shadow slinking along the ice cave wall. She tore a strip off the dead guide's hyperchromium snow jacket and threw it onto the fledgling fire. Blood-stained fabric snapped and crackled, struggling to ignite. I know you're there, she said, huddling close to the orange flames. The blaster holster at her hip shifted as she knelt deeper to tend the kindling. Hot fabric sizzled and popped. Jagged shafts flashed into existence in the fissure sheltering her from the storm. Lelaine gazed at the fire's reflections. Narrow spindles danced in rhythmic patterns on the glacial ice. Whatever she'd seen a moment earlier had vanished. Yuck, she coughed, the stench of volatile chemicals singeing her nostrils. As if in riposte to the human intrusion, the cavern sent her voice bouncing back. At least the smell of the burning fabric wasn't as nauseating as the stink of the Dendari guide's entrails. Those lay a kilometer back on the treeless white expanse, spilled out in oozing yellow and crimson streaks from their face-down and soon-to-be frozen corpse. The hairy bipedal species native to Frebu thought her an easy mark, a foolish academic with no idea of the dangers that accompanied the illicit smuggling of rare gems and minerals. Her wrist-action blade had told the fanged and bulbous-eyed opportunist otherwise, penetrating all 3 layers of protective clothing to gut its furry hide in a single swipe. Lelaine had left the guide naked, sprawled out like a blemish on white skin. She'd stopped a short distance uphill in the snowy void to view the scene. Under the shadow of Frebu's towering glacier, staring at the mess of blood and organs, a line of verse had bubbled up. She'd tweaked and refined it on the march to the temporary shelter until it fit into a poetic box. A chef in the kitchen, bowl of stew too heavy. Across a white tiled floor, see them teeter, totter. Slip, 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 splash and slide. Crash and bang, it spills underbelly. Total crap, she said, and tossed another strip of the jacket onto the flames. Shadows cast on the rippling ice grew as the fabric caught. Nothing besides the fire's reflection danced in a steady rhythm, yet she knew that the lurker remained in the cave unseen. Call it occupational intuition or a human's sixth sense. Either way, another presence shared the haven of the icy refuge. The poem didn't improve her mood. She'd done it again. A septet stanza with 5 lines of hexameter syllabic verse broken with 1 trimeter line. Derivative. Embarrassingly so. A classic parody of Denshi. All her poems sounded like Denshi. The editors who sent rejections said it. The friends she read them to said it. You need to find your own voice, her peers in the poetry group repeated ad nauseum. Let go. You're trying so hard it shows. Of course she was trying. And how dare they? It's not like they'd found their poetic voices. Those amateurs spouted out trite musings while hiding behind flashy meter and rhyme. Their poems were as superficial and predictable as the trendy media entertainment churned out by companies like WeTech, Paragon, and Gonzo Games. Fast-paced distractions that dazzled audiences for a season, maybe 2, before slipping away to be forgotten when the next shiny and amusing diversion whet consumers' appetites. Every galactic cycle, an industry broadcast, game, or book of poems had a meteoric rise in popularity that passed like a shooting star's brief but attention-turning flash in the night sky. How many people could recite a poem by any of those whose names and faces were streamed on tech boards and projected through the common channels and public spaces in the galactic commons? So her poetry sounded like Denshi. Weren't you supposed to emulate the greats when learning the craft? None rivaled the degree of worship attained by the contemporary master of words. Denshi, that anonymous poet whose populist verse tantalized the eyes and ears of billions going on 40 cycles, the one literary star that fell from the sky of fame and fortune without losing poetic brilliance. A voice to emulate indeed. Yours will come in time, Lily, Granny Kissy told her again and again. Liline wasn't so sure. She was starting to... Movement on the cavern wall drew her eyes. The rogue shadow reappeared from the flickering reflections of firelight. The poetic self-critique would have to wait. With performed nonchalance, Liline tore more strips off the jacket and added one to the flames. It ignited, the warm glow sending a wave of heat over her cold cheeks and lips. She lifted an arm and covered her nose as toxic smoke belched from the fire. I don't know who you are, she said, between hacking, but I imagine you must be just as screwed as me out here tonight. Liline lowered the hood on her jacket and kneeled closer to the flames. She blew to encourage the growing fire. Just enough additional oxygen to boost the starter sticks so they glowed long into the Frebu night. Too much and she'd collapse the fragile stack and smother them. If that happened, she was done for, like the Dendari guide lying dead out in the snow. Too bad about that. She liked playing a professor of mineralogy obsessed with rare gems. It made for amusing personality quirks, and the diatribes about extraordinary geological occurrences and alluring yet-to-be-discovered precious stones had made for challenging exercises in memorization. They'd also helped fill the uncomfortable silence on the trek across the tundra from where the two landed the Hylar Explorer pod. Not that she sought anything related to gems or minerals at the coordinates programmed into her handheld comsat. On the contrary, she was after something more valuable: information. It would have been entertaining to keep up the performance, but with the guide out of the picture, Liline could go back to being herself, whoever that was. Like a vampire gazing in a mirror, her identity cast no reflection. She could see it in her mind, the database ID bar blinking red in an error code. No wonder she couldn't find her poetic voice. Don't want to talk? She asked without turning. No response. Fine. Liline leaned in and blew to encourage the glowing flames. With the starter sticks glowing hot, the smoke rose higher, trailing up and away along the ceiling into the glacier's deeper inner reaches. Across from her on the ripples of blue ice, the mystery shadow lingered still. She glanced at the pile of clothes next to her to gain a wider peripheral view. Nothing appeared in her field of vision to that side. The unknown visitor had to be behind her. Her hands sifted through the red and white fabric on the icy floor. Most of the Dendari guide's jacket was left to burn, as well as their heavy snow pants and undergarments. If she were prudent with the portions, it should last through the night. A strand of shoulder-length black hair dropped in front of her face and dangled close to the flames. She pulled off a glove and tucked it behind the wedge of brown skin over her right ear. The tress fell off. Liline repeated the gesture in practiced response, pushing the hairs down into the seam over the canal's opening. 5 cycles since the Buki tiger had taken that ear on Hesh 9 with a near-fatal bite to the head. She knew it would be easier to cut her hair short. Everyone at HQ had been telling her so. That alone was enough to keep her from chopping it off. Still no response or sound of movement behind her, only the gusty winds slamming into the glacier's sheer face. The gales hit the ice wall like a giant's fisted blows against city buildings on far-off planets where less foolish citizens lived safe and routine lives. That had never been Liline's road. Her small taste of the mundane after graduating mandatory schooling was more rank than the smoky stink rising from the fire. Even the Dendari's entrails didn't come close to her disgust of ordinary life with a chipped identity, registered name, and 20 days of paid vacation meant to cover the burden of existence on an annual cycle. She much preferred anonymity and license to deceive, bypass galactic law, and when the opportunity allowed, kill. Assassination wasn't murder when its purpose saved lives, not according to her employer's ethical philosophy. Her role was to be a piece on the board. She did what she needed, when she needed, to do the job. The greater good had no idea how hard she worked to keep them safe. A gentle crunch behind her interrupted the temple's pugilistic blows. Liline drew her blaster and held it up by her side. We really going to do this? If you're here for the Star X crystals, I hate to disappoint you, but you followed a set of tracks to a dead end. Another crunch. Judging by the shadow's height across the fire, she guessed whoever or whatever it was made its way prone. That would be smart. On a quick turn, a shooter would expect to confront a standing figure, except that the reflection gave them away. Amateur. I'm really tired, chump. She grabbed another strip of the jacket and tossed it onto the flames. And frustrated, she whispered. And I'm going to stop there.
That's fantastic, man. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you reading that section of the book. And I hope everyone who's listening or watching to this goes and picks up a copy. Jonathan, if you could let everyone know where they can get themselves a copy of Stellar Instinct. I'll show the cover one more time just because it's so beautiful.
All right, sure. So Stellar Instinct is available in ebook on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited, actually.
Nice.
And paperback, it's available at indie shops. Space Cowboys, Silverstones are good places, and Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and some other spots as well. And yeah.
Awesome. And where can people find you on social media to learn more
So
about
people
you?
can Okay, so people can find me on www.jonathannevair.com or at jnevair, pretty much everywhere. So that's Twitter, Hive, Instagram, and Facebook.
Awesome, buddy. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it.